On that cold New York morning, the distant sound of baby's cry echoed to the walls of a luxurious room, the same one where, hours earlier, Emily's life had changed forever. She had just given birth, a dream, a miracle, and, at the same time, the beginning of a pain no one could ever imagine. Her millionaire husband, Ryan, wasn't there to hold her hand or see her son's face. Just a letter on the table, its words as cold as the marble floor. Take care of him yourself. But what Emily did after that changed everything. And before I tell you this story, which happened right here in the United States, and which will move you until the very last second, I ask you, leave a like and subscribe to the channel, because the end of the story is simply unbelievable. Now, take a deep breath, because what seemed like a fairy tale was about to turn into something much more profound. Before the silence and tears, there was light. Emily was a simple young woman from rural Texas, with a light smile and a look that believed in happy endings. The daughter of teachers, she grew up hearing that honesty and hard work were the only safe paths. And perhaps that was why fate decided to test her so cruelly. When she moved to New York at 24, all she wanted was to work, save some money, and build an honest life. But it was there, between rushed coffees and cold nights, that she met Ryan, the man who seemed like something out of a movie. Handsome, confident, a millionaire, and the owner of an investment firm that was growing faster than the market could keep up. He was the kind of man who made promises with a look in his eyes, and Emily, with a heart full of hope, believed every one of them. Soon, they were married in a stunning ceremony with a panoramic view of Manhattan. To the guests, it was a picture of perfection, the sweet girl and the passionate tycoon. But the truth is, perfection often has invisible cracks. Emily realized that the love she received was conditional. It depended on his mood, his business success, the image he wanted to maintain in front of others. Still, she tried to believe that it could be enough. Mornings began with flowers and ended in silence, and each silence was heavier than the last. Ryan was always busy, always distant, as if love were just another task on the list of a man too powerful to feel. And yet, when she discovered she was pregnant, Emily felt her heart reborn. She thought this baby could bridge what time and pride had separated. She thought the news would make him truly smile, just like before. But the smile never came. Instead came the empty stare, the rush to leave the house, the business trips that lasted days, and the loneliness that grew inside her. She still believed. She believed like someone who prays, like someone who insists on seeing the best in someone who has already given up on love. And this is where the story reaches its first breaking point. Because sometimes what appears to be love is just a mirror. It reflects neediness on one side and ego on the other. If you've ever believed that love could conquer anything, like in Comet, I believe in love. Because what follows will show that love alone isn't enough to hold a heart on the verge of breaking. That winter morning, the hospital seemed suspended in time. Outside, the snow fell slowly, blanketing the city as if trying to silence the world. Inside, Emily felt the contractions, the fear, the hope. Each beat of her heart blended pain and love into an indescribable melody. Ryan wasn't there. He said an urgent meeting prevented him from going. She believed him, or chose to believe him. She kept telling herself that he would show up, that he would walk through that door with a bouquet and a redeeming smile. But the clock ticked, and the chair beside the bed remained empty. When the baby was born, Emily cried, not just for her son, but for the silence. A silence so thick it seemed to fill the entire room. She held him in her arms, little Noah, and felt that there was all that was true left. Hours later, when she could walk, she noticed something on the table, a white envelope with her name handwritten on it. Inside, a single sheet of paper, a few words, but enough to destroy a world. Take care of him yourself. It's better this way. No explanation, no reason, just emptiness. For a moment, she thought it was a cruel joke, a misunderstanding. But when she called Ryan, the number no longer existed. The joint account had been frozen, and his lawyer, cold as a machine, would confirm the next day the divorce was in progress. The news spread among friends like wildfire. Some feigned surprise. Others merely whispered, "I already knew it." The millionaire's perfect woman became the talk of the town, a name whispered at expensive dinners and in magazine headlines. Emily, however, wasn't crying anymore. She was paralyzed. What she felt wasn't sadness, it was disbelief. How could anyone abandon a mother on the day her own child was born? But life sometimes has a quiet cruelty. And when it seems like everything is over, that's when fate begins to move its pieces. Because the reason for the abandonment wasn't just a lack of love. It was something Ryan had been hiding for a long time, and something she would discover in a devastating way. If this part of the story already revolts you, subscribe to the channel now, because what comes next is even more unbelievable. Emily didn't know it yet, but that letter wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a transformation so profound that it would change not only her future, but the way she saw the world. The next few days were a blur. Emily found herself amidst lawyer papers, diapers, and bills piling up on the kitchen table. Everything that was hers, the house, the car, even the furniture, was in Ryan's name. And then, as if by some cruel magic, it all disappeared. A month later, she no longer lived in a luxurious apartment overlooking Central Park. She was in a small rented room on the outskirts of Brooklyn, with a simple crib beside her bed and Noah's cries lulling her to sleep in the early hours. Sometimes when he slept, she would look at the ceiling and wonder, why? Why could someone who claimed to love be so cold? Why did life seem to punish precisely those who loved too much? The answer didn't come. Silence was the same companion as before, only now it lived inside her. Emily tried to look for work, but no one wanted to hire a woman with a newborn. The economy was in crisis, and promises of help from friends vanished like smoke. Within months, the money ran out. Then came the night that would mark rock bottom. It was raining heavily, and she parked the car in an alley, trying to shield her son from the cold. The rain beat against the glass as if the outside world were mocking her pain. Noah slept, curled up in his blanket, and Emily watched him with tears in her eyes. That night, she understood something terrible. There's nothing lonelier than being forgotten by the very thing you thought was home. As the car engine cooled, she thought of everything she had lost, and also of everything she still had. A child, a beating heart, a chance, however small. And it was there, surrounded by darkness, that something inside her changed. It wasn't a sudden decision. It was a flash, a timid flame in the midst of the storm. She whispered to herself, "If the world knocks me down, I'll get up, even if it's with my own hands." People often romanticize overcoming adversity, as if rising from the ashes were easy. But no one talked about the pain, the loneliness, the nights when despair feels more real than air. Emily faced it all, without witnesses, without an audience, without applause. And yet, even with her eyes swollen and her heart in ruins, she took the first step. Perhaps strength doesn't come from big moments, but from the small gestures of those who decide to continue when everything screams to give up. And that's where the story shifts. Because it was precisely at this point of pain that Emily did something no one expected. Something that would turn her fall into the beginning of an unlikely rise. If you believe that life can begin again even in chaos, like this now and write in the comments, I believe in new beginnings. Because what Emily was about to do defied all logic. Emily woke every day before the sun, rocking Noah, preparing bottles, and taking deep breaths to face another day without apparent hope. But inside her, an idea began to grow, small, quiet, but powerful. She would not let her life be defined by Ryan's abandonment. At first, it seemed impossible. A single mother broke, living in a tiny room, trying to support a baby while maintaining her dignity. What was the plan? How to turn pain into opportunity. It was in the early hours of the morning, sitting at her desk with a pen and a cheap notebook, that Emily began to write. First, loose ideas, then concrete goals. Each sentence was a step out of despair. She decided to use what she knew how to do. Sewing, small pieces, delicate embroidery, handmade clothes, something that conveyed her essence and, perhaps, could touch others. The first few days were discouraging. Each piece sold was a silent victory, but it barely covered the rent. The neighborhood where she lived didn't know her story. No one knew that this seemingly ordinary woman had faced abandonment by a millionaire the day she gave birth. But Emily had something no amount of money could buy: determination. She began posting photos of her creations on social media, sharing short stories of overcoming challenges alongside each piece of embroidery. It wasn't just about clothes. It was about real life, about struggle, about love that didn't depend on wealth or status. And then something unexpected happened. A fashion influencer noticed her. A post went viral. The world began to see Emily no longer as the abandoned wife, but as the woman who refused to give up. With each sale, each encouraging comment, the flame within her grew. Emily realized that often, the solution to an impossible problem is to create a path no one believes exists. While everyone saw abandonment as the end, she saw the beginning. But not everything was an immediate victory. There were days when frustration nearly consumed her, days when the cold seemed to freeze her heart and her dreams seemed too distant. However, each difficulty strengthened her conviction. She was no longer at the mercy of the past. And this is where the story truly begins to surprise. Because what seemed like mere survival turned into something greater, a change no one could have predicted, a rise that began quietly, but promised to shake everything around it. If you believe in impossible new beginnings, leave a like and comment. I can too, because the next chapter will reveal the twist that no one expected. Years had passed since that cold morning when Ryan had left Emily with Noah in his arms. The woman who once felt lost was now recognized in her neighborhood and on social media as a symbol of strength and reinvention. Her small handmade clothing business was thriving, and she had earned respect, loyal customers, and a stability she never imagined possible. Then, on an ordinary summer day, the past came knocking again. Ryan appeared, no longer the confident millionaire man, but someone aged, worn by life and time. The arrogance that once defined him had dissipated, replaced by regret and humility. He wasn't asking for reconciliation out of vanity or a bruised ego. He needed help. Poorly managed business dealings, failed investments, and rash decisions had destroyed his fortune. Ryan looked at Emily with weary eyes, searching for some sign of forgiveness, or at least understanding. The world around Emily expected an explosive reaction. Friends whispered, "She'll get revenge, like no one else would." But the reality Emily had built didn't hinge on revenge. She knew that true power lies not in returning harm, but in deciding how to respond to what hurts us. As Ryan spoke, Emily remembered every lonely night, every tear shed, and every silent frustration. What he had done could not be erased. But in that moment, she realized there was something bigger at stake. The chance to define her own narrative, not just react to his. The public, the world, and even Emily herself expected anger or contempt. But she decided to act differently. Not for him, not for fame, but for Noah, and most importantly, for herself. She understood that sometimes the greatest power lies in conscious forgiveness, in choosing not to let the past dictate who you will be. And it's at this point that the story reaches a new level of tension. Because what Emily did next was beyond anyone's imagination. Her reaction wouldn't just be surprising. It would be a lesson in courage, empathy, and emotional intelligence that would change not only her life, but also the perception of everyone around her. If you're surprised so far, like, subscribe, and comment. What would you do if someone who abandoned you at the worst moment came back asking for help? Emily was about to show that sometimes victory isn't in hurting, but in transforming the pain into something greater. Emily's gaze met Ryan's, weary and desperate. For a moment, she felt that old anger boil. But instead of exploding, she took a deep breath. She watched her son play near the window, oblivious to the adult's drama, and understood that true power lay not in revenge, but in the conscious choice not to repeat the cycle of pain. He decided to help him, not because he loved him, nor because he needed him, but because he knew that compassion was stronger than any grudge. The decision to reach out was difficult, a silent test of courage and empathy. Ryan was surprised. He hadn't expected to be helped by the one he had hurt so much. Over the next few days, Emily helped him organize his finances, rebuild a professional life, and face past mistakes. She wasn't fooled. Clear boundaries were established, but empathy guided her actions. It wasn't a favor, but a way of transforming pain into learning, and showing that the strength of the soul can be greater than the cruelty of the past. Meanwhile, Noah grew up surrounded by love and examples of courage. He watched his mother work tirelessly, overcome challenges, and help even those who hurt her. Emily understood that the true legacy she could leave wasn't wealth or fame, but values and attitudes that shaped character. And it was in this balance between forgiveness and steadfastness that Emily's life began to change again. Her small business expanded, achieving national recognition. But the most profound transformation wasn't external, it was internal. She became the protagonist of her own story, no longer defined by abandonment or the past, but by conscious choices, courage, and determination. The most surprising thing about this decision was not only the help it gave Ryan, but the lesson it left for the world. That true victory is not over those who hurt us, but over control we have over our own lives and emotions. And as she watched Ryan rebuild and Noah grow healthy and happy, Emily smiled with a peace she'd never imagined. She understood that the former abandonment, the coldness of that letter, the silence from her millionaire husband, all of it didn't define her fate, only strengthened her. If you're feeling the emotion of this story, like it, subscribe to the channel, and comment. What would you do if you were in her shoes? Emily's answer will inspire you to rethink your own choices. Summer slowly turned into autumn, and life seemed to finally find its rhythm. Noah grew healthy, playing in the backyard while Emily worked in her workshop, transforming threads and fabrics into pieces that carried stories of overcoming adversity. Then came the news no one expected. Ryan was ill, a serious condition that required immediate care. Life's cruel irony. The one who abandoned her at her most vulnerable moment now needed help. Emily didn't hesitate. She adjusted her routine to include caring for Ryan, remaining firm but offering compassion. It wasn't about reconciliation, but about empathy and humanity. The world seemed to watch, curious. How could someone who had suffered so much act with such generosity? Time passed, and Ryan began to grasp the magnitude of what he had lost. Every gesture from Emily, every act of patience, was a silent lesson. True strength is not measured by financial power, but by the ability to transform pain into positive action. A few months later, Ryan passed away. In his hands was a letter, written with tears and regret. Emily, I failed in so many ways. Thank you for showing me there's another way, even when I didn't deserve it. Emily read the letter in silence, hugging Noah, feeling the weight and lightness of life simultaneously. There was no vengeful victory, no resentment. There was learning, maturity, and the certainty that self-love and compassion have a power that no injustice can destroy. But Emily's story didn't end there. Inspired by her own journey, she founded an organization for single mothers facing extreme hardship, a space of support, guidance, and hope, where pain could be transformed into strength, just as it was for her. The world learned through Emily that abandoning someone can be painful, but the response to that pain can create an impact that transcends generations. Her life became a testament to resilience, courage, and generosity, and Noah grew up surrounded by living examples that adversity doesn't define destiny. It's how we respond to it that defines it. And that's where we end the story. A story that began with abandonment, fear, and loneliness, but ended with hope, purpose, and transformation. If this story touched your heart, please like, subscribe to the channel, and comment. Which part touched you most? Your opinion might inspire someone who needs to hear exactly this today. Because in the end, what really matters is not what was done to us, but what we choose to do with what happens to us. Looking back, Emily realized that every tear, every sleepless night, and every moment of fear were stepping stones to the woman she would become. Ryan's abandonment, which seemed like the end, became the starting point for something greater. A life built on courage, resilience, and true love. Emily's story reminds us that not every challenge is a permanent obstacle. Sometimes the greatest power lies in transforming pain into action, anger into compassion, and abandonment into purpose. Every decision we make in the face of adversity has a potential to change not only our own lives, but also the lives of those around us. And that's exactly what Emily did. She didn't let the past dictate her destiny. She chose to forgive, act with empathy, and transform pain into hope for other women who, like her, face the impossible. If the story touched you, remember, you too can find strength in the darkest moments. May every challenge be an opportunity to begin again, and may every fall be just the beginning of an even greater rise. If you felt the emotion of this story, please like it now. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss videos like this, and comment below which part touched your heart the most. Your interaction not only helps the channel, but may inspire someone who needs to hear this message today. Because at the end of the day, life is about choices. And Emily showed us that even when all seems lost, our choices can change everything.